What's up guys? Welcome back to the Ignite SAT Mastery Program. Today we'll be covering Lesson 5 of Module 5, Circle Rules. Now, just as a quick refresher, what are these circle rules questions? Now, they're going to look a little something like these questions. And a really good way to identify them, which I think is kind of obvious, is seeing the word circle specifically. Now, these questions will always mention the word circle or have a circle explicitly drawn. Now in this case, circle is explicitly said, and we can also see a circle equation in 24, and we can also see the word center and radius in 24. Now, these two questions will be the most common forms you will see of circles. Now, let's try answering one of these questions. Let's take a look at 24. The equation of a circle in the xy plane is shown above. What is the radius of the circle? Now, how do we find the radius of the circle? Well, it will be using the circle equation, and the above equation is not fully in the circle equation form. Now, the circle equation is going to look a little something like this. X minus a constant plus y minus a constant, both of those squared, equaling the radius squared. So how do we get that in this form? Well, the way we do that is by using the square method, factoring by a perfect square. And in this case, we can do that by associating x squared plus 4x, splitting that into 2, and then squaring that quantity. And when we square that quantity, we're going to get minus 4 at the end. And the perfect square can also be used for y minus 2y. So we would get y minus 1 squared, and when we subtract that quantity away, we're going to subtract a 4. Now, to get the radius, we know that r squared is going to be the constant. So let's add all the constants to one side. And for us to actually get r, all we need to do is take the square root of 4. And yes, a would be our answer, the square root of 4. Now, how about you guys try answering one of these circle questions? Now that you've had a chance to look at these questions, let's go through it and dissect it together. Which of the following is an equation of a circle in the xy plane with center 0, 4 and radius with endpoint 4, 3, 5? Okay, now this one may be a little hard to dissect, but let's use the information given. The first thing we want to do is set up the circle equation like last time. But we are trying to find both the a and the b and the radius. So let's see how to do that. Well, the a and the b are given to us, the center of 0 and 4, and we just input that in. Now the radius is going to be a little harder, but the way we can find the radius is really by just finding the distance between the 2 points. We know that the center and the end point, the distance between them has to be the radius. So let's take a look at them. R can be set up like this, the difference of x squared plus the difference of y squared, and that's the square root of that. Doesn't that look a little familiar? Just like the sum of squares, right? The Pythagorean theorem. Now, let's input our values. As we input our values, we can go along and get the differences in each case, the x's and the y's, then square them. Once we add them, we're going to get a specific value, and taking the square root of that will result in our 5/3. Now, in this instance, we are looking for the radius squared, and 5/3 squares is 25 over 9. So, plugging this back into our equation, we only get one option, and that is answer choice A. Now, let's look at some tips when answering these questions. First is to recognize what kind of circle equation we are looking for. Are we looking for something that requires a perfect square, or are we looking for something that requires 2 points and us to deduct the information? Next, we're going to put these into equation form, and this is required for all circle questions. Then, we're going to try to find the formula for these equations. There's the circular formula, there might be a distance formula for the radius, anything to that nature. And finally, we're going to arrange all of these pieces into our equation just so we have our final answer. And doing this every time will be a surefire way you get these circle questions correct. Now next time, we're going to be looking at angle operations questions.